At first glance, you might say that the art of Elder Scrolls V Skyrim comes from its stunning graphics and environmental detail, its expansive quest catalog, or even the freedom of its gameplay. While these may be reasons for someone to pick up the game as a means of entertainment, it provides little analysis for the game as a cultural object. The first step to approaching this information is to recognize the game, as with all video games, as a form of media, of communication. While many may consider media to be their local news channel on television or their local paper, all forms of art also convey a message to the public. The art of Andy Warhol is a direct expression of this concept, commenting as much on the 1960s as Shakespeare's work did on the 16th century. Our culture is not only expressed in our artistic creations, but is also shaped by it. What does this have to do with Skyrim, then? As the game provides an alternative world for the player to explore and interact in, it also becomes a means of socialization. What the game provides both reflects and facilitates the cultural expectations of America within the fantastical context of a snowy northern province of Tamriel. Socialization is not so much indoctrination as it is a non-objective explanation of the world, which proves itself by the effective socialization of many individuals to agree to these beliefs. If a belief pervades our media, it is likely considered a part of our lifestyle. In his book, Convergence Culture, Where Old and New Media Collide, American media scholar Henry Jenkins explains that each of us constructs our own personal mythology from bits and fragments of information extracted from the media flow and transformed into resources through which we make sense of our everyday lives. In this way, games are added to our cultural vocabulary alongside reality TV shows and popular music as yet another tool with which to make sense of our world. Skyrim won several Game of the Year awards for its release, is available on gaming consoles and PC, and has sold over 20 million copies worldwide, thus making it an enjoyable part of the lives of millions and also a part of their cultural construction. By encountering certain situations in the game, they develop a knowledge they can then apply to the real world. This isn't to say many people will go looking for ways to hinder the rise of dragons. Skyrim does, however, contribute to established cultural perceptions by engaging the player with certain norms found in other cultural media that address subjects such as gender, race, and social class. But it isn't enough to simply look at the social dynamics present within the game. You also have to take into account its medium, the gameness of the game. Katherine Hayles and Jessica Pressman identify in their book, Comparative Textual Media Transforming the Humanities in the Postprint Era, that the practices of making digital objects are deeply interwoven with theorizing about them. To examine Skyrim through a purely narrative standpoint, like one would a book, ignores both the player's agency and the game's. As stated, Skyrim acts as a means of socialization. Looking at what it allows or prevents in certain interactions can give us an understanding of what the game is saying about our culture and what it encourages or discourages in its players. By allowing the freedom to act in a variety of ways, and yet simultaneously limiting these options, an immersive world is provided with which to interact, the player witnessing and experiencing the land's culture in a similar fashion to walking through their local shopping center. They encounter social events that can be ignored or reacted to, groups that can be supported or fought against, and many choices that can define their characters' ideologies. The beliefs of this avatar can be an extension of the player's own or an exploration of alternative convictions. To play is to imagine, says Adeline Coe in her article The Political Power of Play. And to imagine is political because it allows us to envision a different order. In this light, games are potentially extremely powerful because they go further in terms of forms of identification. It is by experimenting with alternative expressions of oneself in a setting free of realistic consequences that one can better construct their personal identity, which includes their beliefs. Knowing now that the player can utilize the game to help form their own behaviors, we must remember that games have limitations, even when they appear to grant the player total freedom of expression. In some cases, the illusion of total freedom becomes more dangerous than other scripted linear narrative games. If a dialogue option is not available, it suggests that, in a realm of advertised freedom, some choices have not even been considered a possibility. The game either assumes that the player would not have even desired to pursue that option, or it purposefully denies the player the right to pursue it. This missing option becomes an example of an expected cultural limitation of thought, or even a taboo. By denying the player the ability to explore the non-existent option, the game prevents the player from including the option as part of their own identity construction. While the lack of any such option can be attributed to the computational restraints of the game itself, every new option adds to the programming data to be coded, it cannot be dismissed for this. With the knowledge that adding every humanly capable interpretation of dialogue might be impossible at this point in history, the game developers had to choose the options they felt best fit both the gameplay and the player's expectations. Any lack of an option is an expression of how the developers at Bethesda Game Studios interpret our culture, and more specifically, what kind of culture its consumers want to see. In order to have agency within the game, the player must take on the world and culture it is based upon, functioning by accepting the rules and possibilities open to you by the game. Any scripted encounter in the game becomes a cultural encounter for the player to navigate, and the options given represent some of the expected responses to the encounter according to the game and the player's culture. As a means of entertainment, Skyrim becomes an agent of socialization to those who engage with it, assisting and influencing their identity construction as part of the many forms of media they consume. What then does Skyrim teach us about our culture? As with most things, let us begin at the beginning. The player starts bound in the back of a cart heading to an unknown location. They are limited to a first-person view and can only look around, listening and watching as the environment passes by and the others within the cart speak. You are a prisoner, and as you listen, Ralof explains how you were captured alongside him and the leader of the rebellion in Skyrim, Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak. Lokir, the horse thief, was also caught crossing the border, and upon learning of his company, becomes terrified of the awaiting execution. You are powerless, neither able to move your character nor change to a third-person perspective until you reach your destination and are asked, "Who are you?" by the Imperial soldier Hadvar. You are then shown your character, and have the opportunity to customize their race, sex, and features. From here I invite you to explore, as the game encourages. What does Skyrim say about your choices from the start, and where will they lead you in the future?